Ever catch yourself wondering how our minds can be influenced? Like in those really subtle ways that somehow have this huge impact? Well, get ready to dive deep because today we're tackling conversational hypnosis. And lucky for us, we've got access to a training session. But not just any training. This one is usually just for the hypnotherapists themselves.
Yeah, talk about a rare peek behind the curtain, right? We're basically eavesdropping as these practitioners hash out real-life cases. What worked, what didn't, even debating those little nuances of this whole approach. And it's not some polished presentation either. It's raw, unfiltered, and honestly, incredibly
I
insightful.
feel like we snuck into their huddle or something. But
Yeah.
okay, before we get too far, let's lay down some groundwork. When we say conversational hypnosis, we're not talking about like dangling a pocket watch and making someone cluck like a chicken, are we?
Definitely not. No clucking chickens here. It's way more intricate, even, I'd say, elegant than that whole image. It's different from traditional hypnosis. That often relies on those scripts, those direct suggestions. Conversational hypnosis, it's more about guiding someone to tap into what's already there, their own subconscious, for making a change.
So instead of the hypnotist like doing something to the client, it's more about them being this facilitator, helping the client discover things for themselves.
Exactly. Think of it uh, almost like a dance, but between your conscious and subconscious minds and the hypnotherapist, they're like the choreographer, guiding the steps, but not forcing anything, helping you access what's already inside.
That makes me think of this phrase they kept using, all hypnosis is self-hypnosis. What's that all about?
Ah, that's a big one, a core principle. It means that even in the traditional setting, someone's getting hypnotized, it's still ultimately them, the individual, choosing to enter that state, that relaxed and receptive place. Nobody's forcing them.
So even if there's a script, an induction, it's still the person's subconscious deciding to play along.
Exactly. And this is where conversational hypnosis gets really interesting. The practitioners in this training, they're actually debating whether leaning too heavily on those preset techniques, it might actually mess with the natural flow of this whole approach.
Kind of like trying to jam a square peg into a round hole, right? Too focused on the instruction manual, you miss what the person actually needs right then.
Perfect analogy.
Yep.
And you actually see this tension play out when they start digging into real client experiences.
Yeah, the examples are where it gets real, for sure. One practitioner shared this case, a client who felt so fragmented, like their life was just all these disconnected pieces.
And what's so smart is how the practitioner used this metaphor, Legos versus clay. The client, they immediately connected with the Legos, rigid, separate. It clicked as a way to describe what was going on inside.
That's wild how a simple metaphor can just unlock things like that.
It's because metaphors are like these bridges, between our conscious and subconscious. They help us get a handle on, like, process these big, complex emotions, but in a way that feels safe, accessible.
So you can't just use any old metaphor and expect magic, huh?
So it's got to resonate with the client's subconscious, which is why conversational hypnosis, drawing out their own images, their language, that's where it shines. You're tapping into their unique world.
And get this, it gets even more interesting. Another client, their breakthrough involved, wait for it, their eating habits.
This one is so interesting because on the surface, it seems straightforward, overeating. But digging deeper, they uncovered this profound need. But it wasn't for food, it was for nourishment, but on this whole other level.
So it wasn't really about the food, it was about what eating represented to them subconsciously.
Exactly. It shows how different areas of our lives, things that seem totally unrelated, can be tangled up in ways we don't even realize, highlighting how powerful the subconscious is in shaping our actions, our choices.
It really makes you think about all that stuff going on under the surface, right? Like influencing our actions, and we don't even realize it.
Totally. And you know what I find really interesting? The expert leading this whole training, they actually talk about their own experience, like switching from that more traditional hypnosis to this conversational way of doing it.
Oh, I love when they do that. It makes it so much more relatable.
Right. They were saying how at first they struggled to let go of those like scripted techniques, those methods they'd used forever, the ones they knew worked.
Like they were attached to that control,
Right.
knowing exactly what to say, when to say it, that kind of thing.
Exactly. They even said they felt like almost like an imposter at first,
Yeah.
like they were cheating somehow by not following the script exactly.
Almost like they'd been hypnotized by the traditional methods themselves. Took time to break free from that.
Whoa, that's a really interesting way to put it, yeah. But it shows you even the pros are always learning, growing, tweaking how they do things. And of course, we can't talk about conversational hypnosis without mentioning those potential downsides. What they call abnormal reactions.
Right, let's not pretend those don't exist. It's not all like incense and chill vibes, is it?
Definitely not.
Huh.
While they're not common, practitioners got to be ready, especially if they're working with someone who's been through trauma.
So what does an abnormal reaction actually look like?
Imagine someone going into a trance, but it's not peaceful.
Yeah.
It's really unsettling. Like they might have hallucinations or get really agitated, lash out, even experience physical distress.
That sounds pretty intense.
It can be for everyone involved, but they stress that staying calm is key. Being present, knowing how to help that person feel safe again.
So what do you actually do? It's not like you can snap your fingers and say, okay, you're good, back to normal.
Yeah, no finger snapping here. They specifically said to avoid any sudden movements, loud noises, anything like that.
Makes sense. You don't want to startle someone who's already on edge.
Right. It's more about using your voice, calm and steady, to gently guide them back. They recommend focusing on things they can sense, feeling the chair, hearing themselves breathe, that kind of thing.
It's amazing how grounding those simple things can be when someone's feeling really dysregulated.
Absolutely. And I thought it was interesting. They said not to touch the client during an abnormal reaction.
Why is that? You'd think a reassuring touch might be good.
It's actually the opposite. Touch is so powerful, you don't want them to link that physical contact with that bad trance state.
So you're there for them, but without accidentally making things worse.
Exactly. And here's something wild. The expert actually said that even though these abnormal reactions are scary, they can actually lead to breakthroughs.
Really? How does that work?
They said because the subconscious is so active during those intense trances, it's like it can process and work through those deep-seated issues much faster.
Like shaking up a snow globe might look messy at first, but then things settle and become more clear.
I love that analogy. It's like sometimes you have to go through some discomfort to grow, but obviously the person's well-being always comes first.
For sure. Sounds like navigating these situations takes a lot of skill from the practitioner.
It does. And it highlights how important that therapist-client relationship is, that trust and respect.
What happens after an abnormal reaction? Just pick up where you left off?
Not quite. They really emphasized giving the person time to process what happened. You don't want to just ignore it and move on.
It makes sense, right? You don't want to just act like it never happened. Give them time to process.
Yeah, it can really throw you off, especially since they often don't remember much, if any, of the abnormal reaction itself.
Oh, wow. So they're left trying to make sense of this thing they barely remember.
It's like waking up from a crazy dream, You're trying to piece together these little bits and pieces, but you're not sure what it all means.
So then how do you help them deal with that? What happens next?
The training stressed that it's all about being supportive and reassuring, gentle guidance. Like the practitioner might suggest they take it easy for a bit, maybe a nap, then check in with them later to see how they're doing. It's about recognizing how intense that experience was while also helping them feel grounded and safe again.
Kind of like after you get off a roller coaster, right? You need a minute to catch your breath before you even think about getting back in line.
Exactly. Give them time to process those emotions. And you know what I find fascinating? This training, it wasn't just about like, here are the techniques, do this, do that. It made us really question this whole idea of how change happens, like a total shift in thinking.
Yeah, it definitely challenges that whole quick fix mentality, doesn't it?
For sure. It's more like, real lasting change. It's a process, a journey, not some finish line you cross. It's about trusting that your subconscious knows what it's doing, even if it takes you on a detour.
So maybe those detours, they're not setbacks, they're actually like opportunities to explore and grow in a different direction.
Precisely. It's about surrendering to the process, trusting that even when things feel uncertain, there's something deeper at work guiding you.
So as we come up from this deep dive into conversational hypnosis, what's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from all of this?
I think it's realizing that we all have this incredible power within us to change, to grow. And conversational hypnosis, it's just a way to tap into that, to access the wisdom and the resources that are already inside us. It's not about someone telling us what to do. It's about gently guiding ourselves toward a better understanding of who we are and who we want to be.
It's like we're not broken records that need fixing. We're more like these multifaceted diamonds, and all it takes is a little turn to reveal a whole new brilliance. And hey, who knows? Maybe this deep dive will inspire you to do a little exploration of your own. Until next time, keep those minds curious, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep.